We're in the business of unfinished business.
Help for veterans, no holds barred.
Good. It's hard for you to say that.
Sometimes their toughest battle
You have the courage for this.
happens right here at home.
I'm leaving my shame! My alcoholism! My alcoholism!
War brought them to new lows, but a band of brothers helps them to reach new heights. The voices of our veterans,
Put the blinders on and marched on in.
in danger of being silenced.
They lost so many guys.
But you'll meet the man
He's one of the last surviving guys, and I got that story.
who's giving war stories a permanent place in history. The dogs of war,
Kept me from stepping on a mine.
saving human lives, but losing theirs.
The love of that dog.
You'll see the special memorial
This kind of shows us, the unbreakable bond.
that leaves no dog behind. Hello, I'm Bob Kendrick, coming to you from the amazing Mutts Military Museum in Groveport. Mutts showcases, and sometimes memorializes, little-known and often tragic military stories. One of them involves thousands of dogs who served their country. But these dogs didn't get their due. In fact, many were treated like surplus equipment, until now.
I've always loved dogs. I've always loved dogs. It took me a while when I got back from Vietnam before we got a dog here.
Little Lacey here has but one job. Well, two if you count barking, and being lovable. But every day, her owner, Ed Reeves, remembers a dog, Prince, whose job was to keep men alive.
Well, he was trained to find ambushes, booby traps, and tripwires.
This one's after
Not to bark, it was an early silent warning.
It was 1970. Ed and Prince were on point during every patrol in Vietnam.
And every dog handler
back a lot of memories.
feels about the same way. You know, they may not have had the dog for that long, but there's a closeness. You know, obviously, he did his job well. I'm here. You know, so.
In fact, the first hour of their first mission, Prince alerted his unit to the presence of unseen Viet Cong. After the ensuing firefight,
So I pulled out a big Tootsie Roll out of my leg and opened it up and broke off a piece and gave it to him, and I took a piece and I'm eating it, and I looked at him, I said, it's gonna be a long year.
and it was. But through it all came an unbreakable bond.
You know, if he didn't find anything out there, I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried.
Then in 1971, when Ed was shipped home, came a brutal reality no dog handler was prepared for.
The 4,244 dogs that served there, only a little over 200 left Vietnam alive. All the dogs that were left toward the end there, they euthanized. They euthanized over 2,000 dogs. I didn't know what happened to my dog. In 1973, when we pulled out, I just kind of gave him up for dead. But 36 years later, I got information about my dog, that he was one of the 204 dogs that left Vietnam. He came home.
Then came the time for Ed to do the tracking. It took 3 years in the bureaucratic jungle, but he finally got his answer.
And this is a return from Vietnam. His date of service to the Army terminated and went to customs.
Prince went from tracking Viet Cong to drug smugglers. Ed then found a kennel owner near San Diego who told him,
Said he was a customs dog, and he, you know, for quite a few years we housed him here. We took care of him and fed him when he wasn't working, and when he retired, we adopted him. I said, you're kidding me.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
sadly, the creed, leave no man behind, did not extend to man's best friend. But at last,
And a reminder of the sacrifice of the war dogs and their handlers during the Vietnam War.
Americans can come to know of the war dog's worth.
And the home of the brave.
On a late September Saturday, man and beast gather at Mutts Military Museum for the unveiling of the War Dogs Memorial, a 3-year labor of love for Ed Reeves and Lori Mutts.
It upset me that they just treated them as if you know, they didn't care. They served their purpose and then they just discarded them.
Okay, all the handlers just line up behind this thing. Come on. Come on, Tom.
4,244 dogs' names and their identifying number. 227 Dukes, 197 Kings, 147 Princes, a crazy Mike, and a particular Fritz.
97 pounds, mean as a snake.
Tom King's sentry dog.
It was terrible that last night on duty. I sat there with Fritz at the kennel when I brought him in off post, and I cried like a baby.
And how many of those dogs put down had a handler who understood this truth?
I got two dates that my name should have been on the wall. September the 12th, 1970 and February the 14th, 1971. But I am here today because Prince alerted me to danger on both of those days.
What Americans have done to protect our freedoms, I don't think people really realize, and how it affects them. I mean, you're talking 50 years later, and Ed and Tom both can't speak without crying about their dog.
Ed's effort to build this memorial extends past the debt that he and so many others owe war dogs like Prince to a place that should remind
But here,
anyone who sees it.
they're a memorial, not excess equipment. Third line, there he is. 986A.
The war, the search, the memorial, a 50-year journey for Ed finds him now at a crossroads.
Right now I'm drained. I just trying to think of what to do next.
But rest assured, he'll continue to tell the story of a bond as unbreakable as the granite on which it's now etched.
I plan on,
And on quiet days,
you know, when nobody's around, I'm going to sit over there with the dog for a while and we'll have a conversation.
the sculpture is by famous Zanesville artist Alan Cottrell, and the black granite comes from the same quarry in India that supplied the stone for the Vietnam Veterans Wall. Total cost, $113,000, but of course priceless for anyone who has a tie to any of these names.
That's why your life doesn't work. Look, I could put any one of you guys up here right now and you would struggle.
They're on the ropes and getting a dose of reality. You'll see how strong language and a test of strength are helping veterans take a leap of faith right after this quick break. World War II veterans are our oldest living veterans. Mike Perillo here, for example, flight navigator in World War II, the last surviving member of his B-17 bomber crew. Mike, you got a birthday coming up. How old are you going to be?
I'm going to be 96 in January 13th.
Nice to see you doing so well, and nice to see that your story is being kept alive here at the Museum for Younger Generations. Kurt Ludlow now to introduce us to a man who is dedicated to making sure that all veterans' stories are kept alive.
From the kitchen counter in his Dublin home, Eric Rood is helping to rewrite history by talking to one veteran at a time.
I get the histories that you don't read about or hear about.
Eric does interviews for the Library of Congress Veterans Oral History Project.
I got to tell you a little story about that.
He was just being a pain in the butt to us all.
The Marine Corps gave me some fine background for life in general.
And the 37 millimeter opened up on him, put 5 rounds right in his canopy.
And I would have dropped out if I'd had a parachute.
Several hundred so far on his own for no pay.
The most I've done was 39 in 1 week.
Veterans from World War II to Iraq and Afghanistan.
It's the missing information from our history. Just some fantastic stories. And when you hear them, it's what any combat veteran or military veteran knows, but they don't talk about.
They talked to Eric. The pilot shot up over Burma.
We had more goddamn holes in the rear of that plane than you could shake a stick at, but it was all small ammunition.
The WWHO Italian prisoner of war who turned out to be an American citizen.
I'll never forget his name. Frank Passarelli. After all these years, I remember his name vividly.
The Army lieutenant duct taped to a tree by his platoon.
LT didn't like that too well. We did push-ups for days.
Every story unique. Like the airman who put on a parachute but refused to jump when one side of their plane caught fire.
He ain't going out. Till the other side burnt up and this side fell down and he fell out.
We get the rest of the story.
Eric has been getting the stories for 14 years.
So you look at that and you go, okay, I wonder what happened.
This was one of his first, Earl Slanker, talking about piloting a bomber on D-Day.
The Germans were shooting at you, and that's when I got hit. Knocked the hydraulic system out.
Earl's crash landing captured on film. He talked to Eric in 2009, 65 years after it happened.
It's the only time I've ever seen a B-26 bounce. Anyhow, the bombardier, he got a Purple Heart, and I think he got the next day off. I got the next day off.
On this day, Eric shares Earl's story and his mission with the Dublin Rotary.
Good for you for capturing all these great stories.
Many stories unknown until now.
The most historical significant interview I did, I think, was with a fellow named Walter Claren.
Walter Claren, whose top secret work during World War II made it possible for B-29s like the Enola Gay to fly at 70,000 feet, all part of the Manhattan Project, something Walter knew nothing about until later.
I'm reading the newspaper. The Enola Gay bombs Hiroshima. It still gives me chills when I had no idea.
5 months after this interview, Walter Claren died. If not for Eric, stories like these would be lost to the ages. Here, Eric is preserving them for generations to come.
When you ask a routine question, you don't know where it's going to lead.
Eric Rood conducts interviews the third Thursday of every month at the Franklin County Veterans Services Building. Just call them and set up an appointment. And Mike, nice to see you again.
It's good to see you again.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm leaving my grief! I'm leaving my shame!
No more grief, no more shame. Veterans take on their pain and take the ultimate leap of faith. And we've been coming to you from the Mutts Military Museum, a stunning display of military history right in our own backyard. We'll introduce you to the man behind it as our salute to veterans continues. We're here now with the founder and namesake of Mutts Military Museum, Warren Mutts. It's always great to see you.
Great to see you, Bob.
Boy, what you have in here really takes your breath away.
Well, we have the largest collection outside Ground Zero of 9/11 artifacts, and this is Ladder 18's fire truck, which was recovered from the wreckage of the North Tower when it collapsed on it.
Boy, it is really powerful. The VA estimates that in the years since 9/11, 132,000 veterans have taken their lives. Many feel they're not getting enough help, or the help they are getting isn't doing enough. But now a local group, Save a Warrior, has a novel way to get vets back in the game.
Hands high. Hands high. Bring them a little bit closer together, the hands will go higher.
We're typically the last house on the block for the people that come here.
They are men whose lives hang just above the abyss.
Drop the hips in, Greg.
Other solutions that they've attempted have not given them the relief that they're seeking.
There you go, Greg.
Each is at the end of his rope.
They're somewhere between moderately to severely addicted to either drugs, alcohol, behavioral addiction, and with that, there is suicidal ideation.
Each is a warrior to be saved.
My name's Jake. This is the 85th cohort.
I know who I'm talking to.
Jake Clark and his team have a path forward for these 13 men through the Save a Warrior program.
What it really is a 5.5-day war detox.
You scared? If you're not, you're either lying or you're in the wrong place.
Still know your names.
For each, the question is direct, raw.
You f***ed up, because if you're f***ed up, you're in the right place, because I'm in the un***ing business. We are in the business of unfinished business. Unfortunately, business is good.
That's really chill.
For the next 120 hours, be it with horses.
The horse is a barometer of where I am in relationship to myself.
Or heights.
When we put some physicality in this game and some elevation, people get to vulnerability very, very quickly.
And always with honesty.
Unmourned grief crippled me.
Save a Warrior leads them to understanding how trauma gets in.
Anger, fear, and sadness, the purpose of this game.
For the folks that I see, a lot of the PTS actually begins in childhood.
This is the place to leave it, brother. Grief sadness.
And how to get that trauma out.
I'm leaving my grief!
Clark says it's a two-front war, helping vets recognize and separate their childhood trauma from their combat trauma, or as he calls it,
the thing under the thing. And in doing so, you can really move through a lot of stuckness of trauma very quickly.
That guy's saved, I don't know how many lives, probably in your lifetime.
Navy SEAL, now firefighter Kevin, brought his suicidal coworker here all the way from California. Liked what he heard.
How you feeling, man?
And stayed on.
Nobody's poked you in the chest like that and told you what we told you. And I know it's a lot to take in right now.
The paradox is that I brought Aaron here, but I think really Aaron brought me here.
Take your time. The men are thrust into novel situations.
He yelled at my daughter. I made her be a boy.
That extend from conversations.
You take full responsibility?
It's kind of like a polygraphist, asking the questions before they put you on the machine to get to the heart of the matter, to get to the thing under the thing.
All the while building trust, a safety net to catch their deepest pain.
It's exposed me in a lot of ways.
I just told my parents.
And that's scary, but it's also been really, really good for me.
So how do you know when you've reached a man, this person's on the road to healing?
You see the tears start to flow. Our folks find a way to get to the unmourned grief that's stuck in the body. And that's the way they heal. That's why they heal so quickly.
I care tremendously about.
It's 5.5 days, but I'm looking for just a moment. I'm looking for moments of breakthrough.
You have the courage for this.
It can get really, really intense because we're trying to wake up a certain part of you that's gone dormant and is dying.
Joe, go. Stand up. If you fall, you fall. Stand the up. There it is. Yeah. Joe, we're so proud of you. Yes.
Yeah, some people will call it tough love. I call it love.
The leap to a new life is a sight and sound.
I miss you. Say it. I miss you!
To behold.
It's humbling. These exercises taught me the tricks that I use to defend myself, to protect myself, and I'll be forever changed because of this.
And when their time at Warrior Village is over and the game ends,
you know that that person's life, should they choose to walk out of here and do what they say they're going to do and be who they say they're going to be, that their life will never be the same.
These men know if they're ever staring into the abyss again.
Josh, we believe in you. You can do this.
There are now scores of arms waiting to catch them.
And I can see now how I've been stuck. And when I'm vulnerable, I can make a deep human connection with people.
People ask, you know, is it hard to do this? It's hard not to do this. The game is so powerful and the healing is so profound and the rewards go so deep. What I'm left with is this desire to do more.
If you or someone you know could benefit from the Save a Warrior experience, you can find them online at saveawarrior.org. If you'd like to experience a stunning display of military history, you don't have to go too far. We're coming to you from the Mutts Military Museum in Groveport, and you're about to meet the man behind it. We've been showcasing stories that give voices to vets. You'll find many of those stories and a showcase for them here at Mutts Military Museum. We'll speak with Warren Mutts here in just a moment. First, though, let's introduce you to his lifelong passion.
We're off to Canal Winchester today.
0830, Saturday, November 8th, finds Warren Mutts on a mission.
To do their Veterans Day ceremony.
Another chance to deliver pieces of their past to the veterans he so admires.
This is Gail Taylor.
Just as so many have delivered to him.
It's his 45 that's back there in the Korean exhibit. It really is a wonderful thing to be able to meet these people and to know them and to tell their story.
Here in the shadow of the Groveport Water Tower is where Warren ensures those stories take flight. Mutts Military Museum.
The great part about the museum, I think, over any other museum, is that the artifacts we have are people's artifacts. They're not just a bunch of items sticking on a wall. They actually belong to people, and we tell the story of the person.
And in the process, leave every visitor wondering time after time.
An American Civil War Smith & Wesson pistol taken off a Japanese soldier in World War II.
How on earth?
There's the lens of Matthew Brady with Matthew Brady above it, and that's the lens that took that picture of Robert E. Lee.
Did this wind up here?
This is the radar unit that grounded every single aircraft on the West Coast during 9/11.
The answer? Because government and vets know Warren Mutts is a one-man army when it comes to storing stories.
I've made a point to not take anything unless it's unusual, but it just keeps coming, and it is unusual.
Now he needs $1 million to house his 9/11 collection.
This is the second biggest collection outside Ground Zero. This is the rendering of the building in which this fire truck and the 2 police cars and the other artifacts from 9/11 are going to go into. I come out here and look at this stuff and I think all the men that were connected and women with all these items.
And so in this corner of Groveport, there is Mott's motto.
Every day here is Veterans Day.
The reason Warren Mutts is driven to show all the life amid the tools of death.
We don't like wars. Horrible stuff, but without our men and women fighting them, we wouldn't be free.
And Warren joins us now. People come to the museum every day, Warren. What's the one message you hope they take away?
Well, Bob, it's sacrifice. Sacrifice is one thing. The individuals and students don't understand what a cost that freedom is, what a price we paid for the great freedoms we have. We are a living memorial here. We have the artifacts and stories of these people, and we're telling their stories even though they're not with us here today.
All right, well, let sacrifice be the final word here tonight. Thanks again, Warren.
Thank you.
Come to Mutts Military Museum and you're in for an unforgettable experience. And I hope that every day you'll remember to salute our veterans. I'm Bob Kendrick in Groveport. Good night.